There are truths that science cannot touch, because they do not belong to the body. They belong to the soul. Every month, a woman bleeds. Every climax, a man releases. We've been taught these are opposites, two separate destinies etched in flesh. But what if they are not separate? What if they are reflections, two faces of the same energy, one rhythmic, one sudden, both sacred? Carl Jung didn't write much about sex in the way we speak of it today, but his deepest insight was this: the body is a mirror of the unconscious. It reveals what the soul cannot speak, and if we dare to look closely, with silence, with reverence, we begin to see the hidden language within blood and within release. This isn't about biology. This is about the inner architecture of transformation, because beneath the surface of what we've called pleasure or pain is something else. A ritual, a psychic shift, a whisper from the unconscious. Today we step into the forgotten temple of the body, to remember what was never taught, that your release is not just physical, and your bleeding is not just medical. They are both messages from the soul. Before we talk about orgasm or menstruation, we must understand the body not as a machine, but as a symbol. Carl Jung believed that the body was the most honest storyteller of the unconscious. While the ego speaks in logic, the body speaks in patterns, in symptoms, in rhythms. When the psyche is overwhelmed, or when truth is repressed, it is the body that carries the weight, and eventually releases it. For Jung, every recurring experience in the body, whether it's pain, illness, or cycle, is not just a biological function. It's a message, encoded in matter, waiting to be decoded by meaning. The female period is not just a reproductive necessity. The male orgasm is not just a reproductive release. They are both, in their own form, cleansings. They clear what has been stored. They express what the ego cannot hold. They mark a shift in energetic state, both in the psyche and the soul. Look closely. A woman's body builds, holds, and then lets go. Monthly, a man's body holds tension, holds charge, and then releases in a moment. The feminine experience is cyclical. The masculine experience is explosive. But both, if seen from the symbolic eye, are mechanisms of the unconscious cleansing itself through the body. And yet, in our modern world, we've become deaf to this language. We see these events as shameful, dirty, or trivial. We reduce menstruation to inconvenience. We reduce orgasm to entertainment. But when you do that, you cut the cord between the psyche and the soma. You forget that the body has always been a sacred vessel, one that remembers what the mind forgets. The menstrual cycle often coincides with emotional shifts, sensitivity, sadness, vivid dreams, anger. That's not a flaw. That's the shadow material surfacing, the unconscious coming closer to consciousness. Likewise, the orgasm is not just about stimulation. Many men report a strange sadness afterward, a hollow, an emptiness. They often brush it off. But what if it's not weakness? What if it's the soul withdrawing, the cost of release without awareness? Because both bleeding and climax are threshold events. They open a space. They break a wall. They allow something repressed to move. In women, this release is slow, intuitive, deeply tied to the lunar archetype, the rhythm of tides, the call of inwardness. In men, this release is sudden, powerful, like fire escaping a sealed room, an explosion of repressed energy, often unconscious. Neither is better. Neither is more spiritual, but both are misunderstood, and both have been stripped of their sacredness. Jung warned that when you lose the symbolic meaning of something, it doesn't disappear. It becomes pathology. It turns into suffering. The sacred becomes shame. The release becomes addiction. The cycle becomes pain. But if you bring back meaning, if you begin to listen, if you treat these events not as problems, but as psychic rituals, something shifts. You begin to see how the unconscious is not far away. It is in your skin. It is in your blood. It is in the way you release what you cannot hold anymore. Because the psyche always finds a way to speak, even if it has to speak through the body. And it's through this body that we begin to remember that every pain, every pulse, every pattern is not just physical. It's a whisper from your deeper self. There is a rhythm hidden inside every woman's body, ancient, precise, and deeply mysterious. It is not a flaw in the flesh. It is not a monthly punishment. It is a sacred pattern, echoing the cosmos. And if you look closely, it mirrors the moon, the archetype of cycles, emotion, and unconscious wisdom. Carl Jung saw the moon not as a rock in the sky, but as a symbol of the feminine unconscious. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, so too does a woman's energy, rising in fullness, releasing in darkness. And within that rhythm lives the psyche's forgotten language. Menstruation is not simply biological bleeding. It is a psychic release, a letting go, not only of tissue, but of psychic tension, emotional residue, and repressed energy. In ancient cultures, menstruation was treated as sacred. Women would retreat into moon lodges, dream temples, or caves, not to be hidden, but to listen inward. Because during bleeding, the veil between the conscious and unconscious grows thin. Dreams become sharper, feelings grow louder, and the soul speaks more clearly. This is not weakness. This is inner access. Jung called this the return of the unconscious, a period of emotional saturation where the contents of the shadow rise toward awareness, not to overwhelm, but to integrate. That's why many women feel anger, grief, or intense introspection during this time. The psyche is trying to say something, but modern culture dismisses it as PMS, or hormonal imbalance. So instead of honoring the energy, we medicate it, ignore it, or hate ourselves for it. But what if this intensity wasn't a flaw? What if it was a portal? A portal into your own wholeness. Jung believed that symbols appear through the body when the soul is ready to evolve. And menstruation is one of the most powerful of these symbols, because it is cyclical, inevitable, and deeply emotional. It forces a woman to pause, reflect, and feel. It teaches surrender. In many ways, the period is a form of death and rebirth. The womb releases what was never meant to become. And in that release, the psyche makes space for what can become. It is a symbolic purification. The shedding is not only physical, it's emotional, spiritual, psychic, a deep reset, one that men rarely experience so regularly or so viscerally. And yet, because we've lost the mythic lens, we see it only as mess, as inconvenience, as pain. But pain is often the soul's tool for awakening, not as punishment, but as initiation. Think about it. Why does the body bleed, even when no child is conceived? Why go through this ritual month after month? Because the soul is not just here to create children, it is here to create consciousness. And menstruation, when seen symbolically, becomes one of the few remaining rites of passage left in the modern world. A monthly reminder that you are not a machine. You are a being of cycles, of rhythm, of emotional truth. Some women cry during their period and don't know why. Some feel withdrawn, sensitive, wild. Others feel creative, raw, deeply connected. None of these are wrong. They are all valid expressions of the psyche emerging. Because during this time, the ego, the mind that keeps everything together, softens, and the unconscious leaks through the cracks. In dreams, in moods, in the quiet knowing that something old is ending, and something new is forming. This is the same energy that moves through myth, the descent of Inanna, the bleeding goddess, the lunar priestess. It is the feminine soul going inward, breaking down, dying to herself, so she can return more whole. And Jung taught us, what is not made conscious becomes fate. If you don't listen to what your period is trying to say, it may return as symptom, resentment, shame, or numbness. But when you begin to listen, truly listen, the cycle transforms. You begin to feel when your energy is rising and when it needs to rest. You learn to stop pushing through pain. You honor your body, not as broken, but as intelligent. You understand that this bleeding is not just yours. It carries ancestral memory, emotional lineage, and generations of repressed feminine voice. Each cycle becomes a moment to grieve what was lost, to feel what was silenced, and to dream what can now rise. And perhaps that is the deeper purpose of menstruation, not just to create life in the womb, but to awaken life in the psyche. Because when a woman honors her cycle as sacred, she becomes more than a body. She becomes a portal to wisdom, to feeling, to transformation. And in that space, the feminine begins to heal. We rarely ask what a man loses when he orgasms. We praise it. We seek it. We build entire cultures around chasing it. But we never stop to wonder, what actually happens when a man releases? Not biologically, but psychically. Carl Jung warned that anything repeated without awareness becomes unconscious, and the unconscious, when ignored, begins to speak through patterns. For many men, orgasm becomes one of those unconscious patterns, a physical act repeated again and again, without reflection, without meaning, without connection to soul. And over time, it becomes mechanical, not sacred, not transformational, just discharge. But the psyche doesn't forget. The unconscious still speaks. And that's why many men, after climax, feel a strange sensation they can't explain. Not joy, not satisfaction, but emptiness. They roll away. They feel distant. They want silence. They might even feel sadness or guilt, but they don't know why. Because no one ever told them that the orgasm is not just physical. It is a rupture in energy. It is the psyche, exhausted. It is the anima, the inner feminine, withdrawing from a connection that was never truly made. Unlike the female period, which bleeds in rhythm, the male orgasm is a spike, a sudden, explosive collapse of energy. It comes fast. It vanishes even faster. But in that collapse, something is lost. Not just semen, but presence, vitality, access to the deeper self. This is not to shame the act. Orgasm, like menstruation, is sacred. But when repeated without awareness, it becomes a shadow ritual, a way to avoid feeling, a way to numb, a way to bypass the deeper longing for union, not just with a partner, but with the soul itself. Jung taught that men carry within them the anima, the archetype of inner femininity. She is emotional, intuitive, wild, mysterious. And when a man is disconnected from her, he often tries to find her outside himself, through women, through fantasy, through sex. But what he truly seeks is internal union, and orgasm becomes the illusion of that union, a shortcut to feeling alive, a momentary merging followed by disconnection. Many men don't know how to hold emotion, so they seek release. They don't know how to enter the mystery, so they seek climax. But the soul doesn't want climax. It wants depth. And here's the forgotten truth. The male orgasm, in its healthiest form, is not just discharge. It is a surrender, a spiritual dying, a letting go of control, ego, and separation. In ancient mystery schools, the male orgasm was seen as a moment of death, la petite mort, the little death, because for a brief second, the mind disappears, the body trembles, and the self dissolves. But when this is done without reverence, when it's done to escape, to numb, to dominate. It becomes a shadow act, a way to avoid transformation instead of embody it. And the result? Men feel flat, disconnected. They keep chasing highs they can never hold. They become addicted, not just to sex, but to the feeling of not feeling anything at all. Because feeling means facing the anima. And the anima brings chaos, mystery, grief, softness, things men are taught to fear. But without her, they lose the thread to their own soul. So what would it mean for a man to treat orgasm not as a goal, but as a ritual? What would change if he slowed down, breathed through the moment, felt the sadness after, and asked it what it wants to say? Perhaps he would begin to discover that the emptiness is not punishment. It is the cost of forgetting the sacred, and the sadness is not weakness. It is the call to awaken. Jung said that repression creates neurosis. And what is more repressed in men than emotional presence during sex? So the body speaks through patterns: quick orgasm, no afterglow, emotional flatness. Repeat. This is not masculinity. This is fragmentation. But when a man reclaims the meaning of his release, when he honors it as an entry point to something greater than pleasure, he begins to heal his relationship with the feminine inside himself. He stops using sex to run. He starts using presence to feel. He learns to hold the chaos, the grief, the beauty of being human. And in doing so, he becomes more than a man. He becomes whole. Because the male orgasm, like the female period, is not just physical. It is the body's way of saying, let go, feel this. Something deeper wants to rise. And if he listens, the emptiness becomes space. The sadness becomes wisdom. The climax becomes a soul ritual. If this content is making sense to you, please click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Inside every man lives a woman. Inside every woman lives a man. Carl Jung called them the Anima and Animus, the inner counterparts, the unseen energies shaping how we feel, love, desire, and suffer. We often think of gender as external, a role, a biology, a label, but to Jung, it was much deeper. It was archetypal. The anima is the soul of a man, his intuitive, feeling, relational, vulnerable side. The animus is the spirit of a woman, her thinking, directional, assertive side. And when we disconnect from them, we project them onto others. We fall in love with our own forgotten half, thinking it lives in someone else. This is why attraction often feels like obsession, why relationships become unstable, why sex feels urgent but never fulfilling. We're not reaching for the other, we're reaching for the missing part of ourselves. The male orgasm in this light becomes more than pleasure. It becomes a search for the anima, a desperate merging with the lost feminine, not to control her, but to feel her again. But here's the paradox. Without integrating the anima, men fear her. They see her as chaos, emotion, weakness. So instead of opening to her slowly, they collapse into her unconsciously, in sex, in fantasy, in silence. And the result? A cycle of disconnection after climax, because you cannot find her outside until you make peace with her inside. Likewise, for women, the menstrual cycle often brings confrontation with the animus, the inner critic, the voice that pushes, doubts, demands, the part that says, keep going, even when the body wants to rest, or the part that grows silent and angry when she feels unseen. During menstruation, the ego loosens, and the animus rises. If he's wounded, he'll surface as irritation, overthinking, or depression. But if he's integrated, he shows up as insight, clarity, sacred discipline. So both cycles, orgasm and menstruation, aren't just physical events. They are psychological dialogues between the conscious self and the inner gendered energy. And they often reveal how broken that relationship has become. Many men fear their softness. Many women fear their fire. So instead of embracing the anima and animus as inner guides, they turn them into shadows. And what we repress becomes what we chase or what we fight. Think about it. A man who cannot cry may seek countless women to feel something through them. A woman who cannot speak her truth may become exhausted, silently bleeding every month, not just from her womb, but from her unspoken soul. But when we begin to turn inward, to listen, we see that orgasm and menstruation are moments where the inner psyche becomes most visible. They are mirrors, not of weakness, but of need, not of dysfunction, but of longing. Jung wrote that true individuation, the journey toward wholeness, requires union of opposites, masculine and feminine, doing and being, spirit and soul. The anima teaches men to feel without drowning, to receive without losing power, to hold intimacy without fear. The animus teaches women to speak without apology, to direct without hardness, to think clearly while staying rooted in intuition. These are not ideas. They are living energies. They appear in dreams, in fantasies, in the way we speak to ourselves in the dark. And they surface most clearly in those vulnerable moments, when a man lies next to his own emptiness after climax, when a woman curls into herself, bleeding through emotion that has no words. These are not problems to fix. They are doorways. Doorways back to the self. Not the conditioned self, but the true self, the one who holds both sun and moon, penetration and flow, light and darkness. And perhaps this is what our bodies have been trying to say all along. That your pain is not just pain. Your cycle is not just blood. Your release is not just pleasure. They are all the psyche's way of guiding you back into relationship with the parts of yourself you left behind. We live in a time that worships stimulation and punishes stillness. Men are taught to conquer, women are taught to suppress, and somewhere in between, both lose their connection to the sacred intelligence of the body. The male orgasm has become a sport, fast, goal-oriented, disconnected. It's about performance, not presence, release, not relationship. And when it's over, many men feel nothing. No joy, no intimacy, just numbness. They joke about it. They chase the next high. But underneath, there's a quiet ache they don't talk about. A sense that something was supposed to mean more, but it didn't. This is not weakness. This is spiritual exhaustion. Because when you use sex to escape the soul, it eventually leaves you feeling even more alone. And for women, the opposite burden: silence, shame, inconvenience. Menstruation is treated like a problem. Cover it up, push through, act normal. No one tells her that this bleeding is sacred, that her tiredness is valid, that her heightened emotion is wisdom trying to rise. So she doubts herself. She apologizes for being too much. She swallows rage that should have been voiced. She cries in secret and tells no one why. Because the world doesn't want her emotional beat. It wants her predictable. But the soul is not predictable. It moves in waves, and when forced into a straight line, it begins to suffer. Carl Jung warned us, what we repress doesn't go away. It turns into symptom. And what do we see today? Men addicted to porn, never truly satisfied. Women disconnected from their cycles, suffering in silence. A culture that knows everything about technique and almost nothing about meaning. We've turned sex into performance. We've turned periods into inconvenience. And we've forgotten how to listen. But the body remembers. It always remembers. That's why men keep chasing climax, but feel emptier each time. Because the orgasm isn't giving them what they truly want. It's not release they're after. It's reconnection to feeling, to presence, to the inner feminine they've lost. And women, they're not just seeking pain relief. They're seeking permission to rest, to feel, to let the world pause for a moment so they can remember who they are underneath the roles. But in this modern system, no one gets that space. We reward control. We punish surrender. So men harden, women push through, and both suffer. But what if we paused? What if we asked what the body is trying to say? The man who feels flat after sex isn't broken. He's being asked to feel deeper, to go beyond orgasm into intimacy with the self. The woman who dreads her period isn't weak. She's carrying generations of silenced pain, and her bleeding is the soul's way of saying, let it go, let it move, let it be seen. The dysfunction is not in the body. It's in our relationship to it. We've lost the symbolic lens. We see only mechanics, and without meaning, every sacred act becomes a burden. But it doesn't have to stay this way. Reclaiming the sacred means slowing down. It means asking why you feel sad after climax, why you feel lost when you bleed, why your energy crashes even when life looks normal. These are not flaws. They are messages. And when we stop pathologizing them, when we stop running from the discomfort, we begin to heal. Not by fixing the body, but by listening to what it's been trying to say all along. That pleasure without presence is hollow. That pain without meaning is suffering. But when we bring soul back into sensation, even the most mundane act becomes a ritual. And the body, once ignored, becomes your wisest teacher. You don't need to change your body. You need to change how you relate to it. Because the male orgasm and the female period are not problems to solve. They are portals, messages, rituals of release from the unconscious. But they've been stripped of meaning, reduced to shame, silence, or indulgence. And the soul, which speaks through rhythm, energy, and sensation, has been ignored. So how do we reclaim what was lost? We begin by slowing down. For men, this means approaching orgasm not as a goal, but as a gateway. Notice what happens before, during, and after. Feel the shift in energy. Observe your thoughts, your breath, your mood. And when the sadness or numbness comes after, don't turn away. Sit with it. That emptiness is not failure. It's space. A space that can be filled with truth, with presence, with awareness. Instead of chasing stimulation, try cultivating presence. Explore touch without agenda. Experience closeness without climax. Let the body lead you into sensation, not toward escape, but toward reconnection. The male orgasm becomes sacred not through restraint, but through reverence. For women, the invitation is different. It is a call to return to the rhythm of your own body, to stop pushing through the cycle as if it's a flaw, to rest when your body whispers, pause, to cry without apology, to bleed without shame. Track your energy throughout the month. Notice your dreams before you bleed. Journal your moods. Ask what part of you is dying, and what part of you is ready to be born again. The period is not just physical, it is a psychic cleansing, a spiritual renewal, and when you begin to honor it, you reclaim your power, not as performance, but as truth. Jung spoke of individuation, the path to becoming whole, and that path is not found in the mind alone. It is written in the body, in the blood, in the longing, in the release. To reclaim the sacred, you must first accept the messiness of being human. You must welcome emotion. You must make peace with your shadow, the parts of you that feel too raw, too chaotic, too inconvenient. Because the orgasm and the period both bring the shadow to the surface, they reveal where you feel unloved, where you seek control, where you're afraid of surrender. And in those moments, if you are willing to stay awake, healing begins. Try this. Before you climax, pause. Ask yourself, what am I really seeking? Is it pleasure, or is it closeness? Is it control, or is it release from something deeper? Before you bleed, light a candle. Let yourself be still. Place your hand on your womb and ask, what am I letting go of this month? What grief needs a voice? What truth have I ignored? These are not rituals to perform. They are moments to return to yourself. Because the body is already sacred, you don't need to make it holy. You only need to remember that it is. When you listen, the sadness after orgasm becomes a message. The fatigue during your period becomes a teacher. The cycles, the cravings, the silence, all become part of your unfolding. This is the work of integration, of soul retrieval, of becoming whole. And it begins in the smallest moments, a breath before release, a journal before bleeding, a whisper to yourself that says, I trust my body. I trust what it's trying to show me. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about stepping off the treadmill of shame and speed and returning to the slow, rhythmic language of the psyche, speaking through the flesh. Because when the masculine learns to feel and the feminine learns to rest, something ancient wakes up inside. And you stop trying to escape your body because you realize your body has been trying to bring you home. The male orgasm, the female period, they were never meant to be separated. They were never meant to be shamed. They are mirrors, sacred, ancient, alive. One is sudden, one is cyclical, but both are messages from the soul, inviting you to listen, to feel, to return to the truth beneath your skin. You are not broken. You are not too emotional, too numb, too soft, or too tired. You are becoming whole. When you honor what the body is truly saying, sadness becomes sacred. Bleeding becomes rebirth. Orgasm becomes awakening. This is not about fixing your body. It's about reclaiming its language. So pause. Breathe. Feel what you've been told to ignore. Because inside the very moments you've been taught to hide are the keys to your deepest healing. If this touched something in you, leave a comment below. Share what your body has been trying to say, maybe for years. Let this be a space of remembering. And if you want more truths like this, subscribe. Not just for information, but for transformation. Your soul has always known. Now, your body is ready to follow.